Let's broaden this all out and talk about it. Joining us now to discuss, CNBC's NASDAQ reporter, Kristina Partsinevelos, along with Bernstein semiconductor analyst Stacy Rasgon. First off, Kristina, to you, it seems a little bit much ado about nothing, but they're upset. Do Nvidia investors have to be worried?
Your interview was great, and they noticed it, so hats off to you. But a lot of this could be perceived as noise because we have for some time seen headlines that Beijing officials have been pushing back, telling large companies like Alibaba and ByteDance to scale back their orders of H20s. These are chips specifically made for China, or even to stop them altogether. Why? Because they want Chinese companies to rely on homegrown options, for example, like Huawei. So this is another example to get them riled up and show that they're, really pushing back, and Nvidia is not going to be, the go-to anymore. Huawei should be the go-to. However, it seems
What else would they buy?
Huawei's Ascend chips, but they're not the same.
They're not as good.
The performance is not as good when we're talking about computational power, but they're much cheaper and localized. So, and I know Stacy can get more into the details in terms of the nitty-gritty with that, but there is an argument to be made, and we can see it with DeepSeek. DeepSeek large language models, an AI startup in China doing really well with Huawei chips and Nvidia chips. So it's an opportunity for them to crack the whip again. And so what does this mean for Chinese revenue for Nvidia next Wednesday?
And that's Stacy Rasgon. That's it. And first off, the interview is just over a month old. So the story was a little bit vexing to me. But, hey, let's talk about it, because is there a risk in the numbers? Would Nvidia sell China fewer chips because they're, quote, insulted by those comments?
Well, you have to remember, right now in the numbers, China is zero.
He's
clearly not using the latest Nvidia chip
he's not using
in that Zoom processor. There's times when things freeze on the air, and I'm like, is that me? Like, am I freezing? So we're going to try to get Stacy Rasgon back. But to his point, it's a zero now, so you can be insulted. But if you want these chips, you're going to buy them. And China's, listen, they're a smart country. They're not going to think that we're going to give them the absolute best that we've got.
No.
Are they?
No, they're not going to think that. To Stacy's point, he was just talking about the revenue. So last quarter, China contributed $4.6 billion, which was still a little bit over almost 13% of total revenues. The assumption is that the H20 ban was put in this quarter and then lifted, so they weren't actually shipping chips to China. They just got their green light very recently. And the problem with that is, how do you calculate that into total revenues going forward? And so that's the big question for earnings next Wednesday. Are these H20 chips that were sitting, work in progress, are they going to be able to ship out very soon? Have they been shipping out? What's the quantity? So you have mixed results coming from various sell-side research. Like, for example, at Wedbush, I was just reading, he thinks that the contribution is going to be actually much smaller, whereas other people think it's going to be a tailwind in the next 3 quarters or so.
So Stacy Rasgon, I believe we have him back. He has upgraded his chips. I'm now thinking about a great 80s book and movies, Less Than Zero. Is this going to have a negative impact on a zero number for Nvidia?
Yeah, again, right now in the numbers, it is zero going forward. I don't think at least the sell side has broadly started to put China back yet. And even if they are free to sell, it would take some time to actually get into the numbers. They have to ramp up the supply chain again. You're not going to see any this quarter. It'd be very little next quarter. Maybe you get into the end of the year, maybe, but it's not that much in the numbers. And, the stock's been a little weaker recently. I'm not sure how much it is in expectations yet either. I think people are sort of just, it's a waiting game. I'm
sure, Stacy, you hear about it, and a lot of people may, if they don't subscribe to the Financial Times, are thinking, what are you talking about? Well, the cover of the Financial Times, as much as you can have a cover these days on the internet, we get it, is basically this story about how Beijing is offended about those comments that we just showed. You're rolling your eyes, and I get it, because I kind of also wonder why the story is out. Yeah. The comments are a month old, but I'm sure you've heard about it.
I've heard about it. And look, I think China has reasons to want to stimulate demand of their local parts. And frankly, I don't think they need to be insulted in order to go down that path. That's the path they're going down. The issue is the local parts are not as good. Frankly, they perform okay, because NVIDIA's got one arm tied behind their back in terms of the thresholds to which they can ship in terms of performance. But NVIDIA has ecosystem and software compatibility. The Chinese have basically built their whole AI infrastructure around NVIDIA. So regardless of what China says or suggests, at least where I take some solace is there is demand for the Nvidia parts. They want to buy them. In fact, you even mentioned DeepSeek. There's been some rumors about DeepSeek, like R2 delay, because they were trying to go to Huawei, and it turns out it's actually not as easy to use those parts. They want to use Nvidia. We'll see what they're allowed to do or not. But in terms of the actual numbers for Nvidia, I don't think there's much, at least in the forward numbers anyway. So anything they can get, I think is all right.
Brian, you were saying.